I like to commence in saying the empowerment of a people that have been lost, and to bring them back so that they might come into who they are, can be proven through scriptures that they're lost and why they're lost. If we go to Jeremiah will tell us, Jeremiah 50, that they're lost. And therefore, why are they lost? We can further prove it by scriptures, because the empowerment of a people is to receive what belongs to them and them alone. And without it, they can't be empowered, because without what is theirs, then it belongs to someone else. And what someone else has that doesn't belong to you will not empower you, because it's not yours. It says in Jeremiah 50, verse 6, my people have been lost sheep. It says, my people have been lost sheep. The reason why my people have been lost sheep is because my people in the book of Hosea 4, it will begin to tell us that the reason why, as it says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Now that is something that the people, because they don't have their knowledge. So that Hosea 4 verse 6, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. He says, my people. In Hosea 8 verse 12, it goes on to tell them why they were lost. They were lost because they refused, as it says, Hosea 8 verse 12, I have written to him the great things of my Torah, but they have counted it a strange thing. Because my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. What was their knowledge? When we go into Deuteronomy 4, Yahweh God tell you that this, once we neglected what was ours, there was no hope for us ever to return. We were lost. We were never going to find our way back until we return to what belongs to ours. It said, what belongs to ours. It says, Deuteronomy 4 verse 6, say, keep therefore and do them, for this is what? Your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who has Elohim so nigh unto them, as Yahweh our God is in all things that we called upon him for. So he said, keep therefore, for this is your wisdom and your understanding. Yahweh God told us in the book of Micah, he told us to return back unto him. Micah 3:7. He told us to return. Even from the day of your fathers, ye are gone away from my ordinance and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saying Yahweh of hosts. So he told him, he says, return. That return can only be by one way. See, we can't return unto Yahweh but by one way. And therefore, in the book of Amos, it told you how we were supposed to return. Because what was missing was, as he said, I've written to them great things, but they have esteemed them what? Strange. What was it? The Torah. The Torah was what was written and given to us, but we esteemed it strange. But what did Yahweh says in the book of Amos 3? In the book of Amos 3, he told us, he said, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Can two walk together except they agree? So he says, can two walk? He said, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. You know how great that is. He said, but can two walk together except they agree? So the thing is that we can only agree to Yahweh knowing who we are, so that we might return to him, as it says in the book of how shall we return? In the book of Deuteronomy 30, it said, and it shall come to pass when all these things have come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them mine among all the nations, whether Yahweh thy God has driven thee. And thou shalt return unto Yahweh, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that then Yahweh thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all nations, whether Yahweh God has scattered thee. So he said to him, he said, when you will return and obey the voice, and it said, among all nations, the blessing and the curse will come upon you, and you will obey his voice to all that I command you this day, that thou and thy children with all thy heart and with all thy soul. And therefore we are returning and can return when we not only call these things, but that we might keep and do those things that Yahweh God has prescribed for us. Because we are a curse or we are a blessing. And therefore, if we don't keep the commandments, we're the only people that do not, as it says in Isaiah 52, our redemption is in keeping of the commandments. Our redemption is not in money. You need money to pay your bills, but when you want to understand your redemption to your God, it's not about money. Your redemption to your God is to keep the commandments that has been prescribed. Other than that, there is no redemption for you. It says, Isaiah 52, verse 3, for thus said Yahweh, ye have sold yourself for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money. It didn't mean you shouldn't work. It means that what your redemption from the circumstances that you're in comes through what? Obeying the commandments that has been prescribed, so that you might return to your God. Other than that, there is, as he says in Hosea, he tells you in Hosea, the empowerment of a people can only be what is pertaining to them. And being that you are the children of Israel, therefore, according to what has been written in this book, your empowerment can only come through you keeping the commandments of your God. That's why it says in Hosea 13, verse 9, he makes mention of the following. He says, O Israel, thou hast destroyed thyself, but in me is thy help. See, our help. But he said, how can two walk together except they agree? Our agreement with our God is to keep the commandments that pertain to him. Other than that, there is no join to receive the blessings that only can come from him. Because we who are Israelites that has come into this country, as it's been stated here, I mean, we're in Egypt again, according to what is written in Deuteronomy chapter 28. And therefore, as we call these things to mind and know what we need to come into harmony with Yahweh God, as it says here in Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. When we look, this is Egypt again. And we when it depicts who we are as a people, we're the only people that was sold in America off of ships for bondwomen and bondmen. And we are the people that has been prescribed, that has the description that is written in this book, where it says here, how it says, Deuteronomy 28, verse 48, therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which Yahweh shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he has destroyed thee. And that totally, when you read Deuteronomy chapter 28, from verse 1 to verse 68, it clearly shows that we are the people. And what did we fall? We fell because, as it sits and states here, Deuteronomy 28 verse 1, and it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahweh thy God, to observe to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that Yahweh thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come upon thee. And what was it intent? It was pending on us keeping the commandments. And it came, and that's from Deuteronomy 28, from 1 to verse 14. From 15 on to 68, it says, and it shall come to pass, that thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh God, to observe and to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. That's why it says in the book of Deuteronomy, the empowerment of us as a people can only come to returning. And it shall come to pass when all these blessings, it says, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all nations, whether Yahweh thy God has driven thee, and shall return unto Yahweh thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day. This is Moses telling them, this is your return, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul. He says, nothing else must matter but keeping of the commandments, having a total commitment that you did not have then, that you should have now. That's why he says that and shall return unto Yahweh God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, with you children, and says that then Yahweh thy God will turn thy captivity. You the only people in America that's in captivity, meaning you was taken by force. It says, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all nations, whether Yahweh thy God has scattered thee. Yahweh has scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out of the utmost parts of heaven, from thence will Yahweh thy God, and what he said, thy God, gather thee, from thence will he fetch thee. And Yahweh thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. So we will return, and we're returning ever so gradually, ever so steadily. Our empowerment is to return, and we are. And therefore, as it says, and Yahweh thy God will circumcise thy heart and the heart of thy seed, to love Yahweh thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. Because this is not, as it says, not a vain thing for you, for it's our life. Keeping the commandments is our empowerment of our life. And Yahweh thy God will put all these curses upon thy enemies. See, what they have seen and taken a position that they have taken against us, all of these curses is going to come upon them. And it says, and Yahweh thy God will put all these curses upon thy enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecute thee. So, who is it that maintains a position to hold us from coming back to be empowered into our proper estate? That when we go forward to keep and do the things that have been prescribed, because when we look in the Torah from Genesis to Deuteronomy, it is your whole history of how you had a relationship with Yahweh. What? Thy God. It didn't say God, it said thy God, your God. When we look in this book, it tells a consistent story that we would do something that would not be favorable, and therefore the circumstances would not go well with us, because Yahweh God, who is God, will turn away from us, and we would really catch the worst of it. And now we must turn back, and there's only one way to turn back, and that's by keeping these commandments. There's no other way. You have to reclaim what belongs to you. Anything else, I don't care what degrees you have, how much money you have, it is the service of doing to obtain what belongs to you. And therefore, it's for you to seek these things out by understanding who you are as a people, as a person, so that you can come back into harmony, because you're the only one that Yahweh made a covenant, an agreement with. He didn't make it with nobody. He's talking about nations of people. And therefore, you who are a nation, and therefore when he talks and tells you that you are a nation, he explained that it was a nation that rebelled against him. It wasn't a religion. And therefore we must return back to our God by keeping what? The commandments. Keeping the holidays. And this is why in Isaiah chapter 1 verse 2, Hear, O heaven, and give ear, O earth. For Yahweh has spoken, I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people do not consider. A sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, seed of evildoers, children that are corrupt. They have forsaken Yahweh. What? They have provoked the Holy One of Israel. You understand? So he says, they have forsaken Yahweh. And therefore, what is he? The Holy One of Israel, because Jacob's name was changed. And therefore, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel, and God said, Yahweh God said, what? He is the Holy One of Israel. Because he has attached himself to his people. Who is his people? Who is his inheritance? It's written right here in this book. It's written right here in this book that his whole inheritance is the children of Israel. And it can be proven with consistency by reading the book, and you would see. He said, I am the God of Israel. He never said he was the God of anybody else. As Yahweh God has said, he says in Joel chapter 3, for behold, in that day and in that time, when I shall bring again the captive of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down in the valley of Jehoshaphat, which means the valley of judgment, and I will plead with them there for my people. Who's his people? Israel. And for my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. If that land ain't parted, what is it? It says, and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a whorelot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. So Yahweh God has told, he said that he's going to plead for his people. Who is his people? Israel. And remember, Yahweh God has for them that have put their hands on us, that we would not come back and being a nation again. They not only severed our cord from our own empowerment, they also did it to themselves. When we look at the earth today, there is no stability. It's so stated so clearly in this book. There's no stability in the earth, because what stabilized the earth, they have compromised it by tampering with it. And therefore, what has they tampered with? It says here, they know not, neither will they understand. They walk in darkness. All the foundation of the earth are out of course. And that's what Psalm 82 verse 5, it said, all, not some, the foundation of the earth are out of course. He said what? They know not, neither will they understand. They walk in darkness. Why? Because when it was told, where was the blood? One thing about Yahweh, he didn't put anything in heaven. He put it on earth. And he put it in a people. He put it in a people. This earth is cursed or blessed by a people, because it was given to them when Abraham had Isaac, and he went to sacrifice him because Yahweh God had tried him to see his obedience. Yahweh God gave him through his seed that Isaac would have two sons, Esau and Jacob, and he would bless them. And therefore, he said, and through his seed, and we know that Jacob's name would become Israel. And therefore, as it says in Genesis 22, verse 17, and in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seeds as the stars of heaven, and as the sands which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemy. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. Who obeyed his voice? Abraham. Abraham obeyed his voice. And if we go up on the same chapter, Genesis 22, verse 13. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thick by his horn. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the sight of his son. And Abraham called, and then it goes down, and I'm skipping to verse 15. And the angel of Yahweh called unto Abraham out of the heavens the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn unto Yahweh, for because thou hast done this thing, and have not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sands which is upon the seashores. And thy seed shall possess the gates of his enemies, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. See, so the blessing is through his seed. And the thing about it is that when they have tampered with the seed of the children of Israel, as he said, those that will bless you will be blessed, and those that curse you will be cursed. And therefore there has been a curse on this earth because of how they have treated the blessing. We are the blessing of the planet. And therefore those that have done unjustly to us, Yahweh is not pleased with them. So we know that he said, I am the God of Israel. We are Israel. We are his elect. We are his chosen. And therefore all of this can be proven by just reading this book, because it doesn't veer off from that constant presence that is written on the pages, that he is the God of Israel, that he is the God of the people that he chose, and they are the blessing of the world. They are the blessing of the nations. Why? Those that will bless them will be blessed, and those that will curse them will be cursed. Because it was given to what? It was given to Jacob to be a blessing or a curse. And therefore, because the nations have not adhered, and the thing is that it's just like they'll tell you, well, I don't know. If you go downtown and stand before a judge and tell him you don't know nothing about the law, it is an insult. They have the Bible, which they have named the Bible. To tell God with this great book in the earth that you don't know what is been prescribed that you should participate in to have a stability of this planet, then it is an insult that you have done what you have done when there is a book that is the light of the world and a people that is the bearer of this light. Therefore, by you not keeping and giving them their own history, because that's what the Bible is. The Bible is actually the history, the true story of the children of Israel with the relationship to their God. It is the empowerment of a people that they must obtain what is theirs. And this book tells a story that relates totally to those people. When the black American that came here as slaves will look, he will find his total path back home. And as it says in the book of Deuteronomy, telling us what attitude to take as we travel back home to where we belong. Yahweh God has said this to remind us that we're going to see something and bear witness to it. And that is that happy art thou, O Israel, for who's like unto thee? And he says it, happy art thou, Israel, for who's like unto thee? O people, saved by Yahweh, the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellence. And thy enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread on their high places. May Yahweh bless you, and may Yahweh continue to bless you and strengthen you in all things and in all your endeavors. And remember, the Torah is truly our story of enlightenment. May Yahweh bless you forever and ever. Amanah.